Maybe a lot of you are better knowledgeable than I am. When we first decided on a very exciting keynote speaker, I had to do a little bit of research, a little bit of stalking, and I was blown away by what I discovered by this next person. She is truly incredible, and I'm not even going to sell it because you will listen to her and you will work it out for yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker is in fact an internationally renowned keynote speaker. She is a kick-ass author. She is a tech influencer, a content creator. She's also recognized by Thinkers 360 as one of the top 50 global thought leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, you see, Ivo, I have a Ivo in the back because that is the situation. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Nicky.
Hello, everyone. Every time I get introduced, I'm going like, okay, is that me? Hello, Durban. Hello. We're not there yet. Hello, Durban. Yes. Hello, Joburg. Apparently, I can hear them. And hello, Zimbabwe.
Hola.
Oh yeah, that's good. So, okay, are we on? All right. As she has introduced, my name is Nicky. I used to think that my name was easy until some people started writing and pronouncing it completely different. The Africans had a very different version of Bird. Sometimes I see someone in my inbox say, "Hi, Vicky nerd." I'm like, my name is right there. You come in and like, "Hi, Vicky nerd." Who here thought my name was Vicky? Oh, great, that's interesting. That's the first time. Some people usually they'll have my book in their hand, they're calling me, "Hey, Vicky." I'm like, come on, I'm not Vicky. My best friend's name is Vicky, and no one has ever called her Nicky. But somehow I get called Vicky all the time. So anyway, my name is Nicky Bird. I am from Cameroon, but I didn't arrive last night. Okay? I always want to say where I come from and get that out of the way before someone asks me, "Why do you speak like that?" No, I don't speak like a South African, if you know what I mean. So I'm from Cameroon. I've been living and doing life in South Africa for almost 15 years. So actually 14 years to be exact. So South Africa is like my second home. I do go to different parts of Africa, but this is home for me. So I'm so glad to be here. The last time I was in Durban was actually in 2019. Can you imagine? That's been a long time. COVID happened. The last time I was here was during the GovTech conference, where I was one of the speakers. Anyone here attended that conference? Yeah. GovTech. Oh, okay, someone did. Yes, that was my last time in Durban. Then COVID happened and everyone has been on lockdown. So I'm really excited to be here in the flesh, so that we don't have to do, can you hear me? Can you see my screen? We know how the drill goes, right? So I'm really so glad to be here. And we're looking forward to having an amazing time. It's really all about disrupting the status quo, right? So I understand that the theme of this event is digital disruption, and it is a topic that I'm particularly very excited about. I enjoy talking about disruption. I enjoy talking about innovation and how technology is forcing us to actually do things differently. And so today I'm going to be talking, or rather asking a question: which side of disruption are you sitting on? Because there's no neutral ground, okay? There are some people that are hoping they can bury their heads in the sand and wake up the next morning and this whole disruption thing is over. Or we're no longer talking about change and all these things that are happening in the world, or we're no longer talking about a pandemic. It's not going to happen. You are either this way, that way, or the other way. There is no neutral ground. And so before we continue, I want to just quickly define on what digital disruption really is all about. And it's a radical change to an existing industry or market due to technological innovation. And this doesn't mean that it is one particular industry that's being disrupted, because no industry is immune to disruption. Everyone is being disrupted. Every industry is being disrupted, and I'm sure we can all attest to that, right? Everyone, technological disruption is affecting every industry. And the key factor that defines digital disruption is really about change. If we maintain the status quo, then we cannot move forward or make any progress as far as this era concerns. So it's really about change. And disruptive change usually occurs because of innovation in technology, or maybe an organization is having a different structure, or a different transformation is happening in business model. But usually, disruptive change happens because of innovation in technology, advancement in technology, and we are all witnesses to what has happened. Some studies or some experts actually say that because of the pandemic, the world was fast forwarded like 5 years ahead into digital disruption. And for a continent like Africa, it's actually way more, because there are certain processes that we are doing right now, certain things we're doing now that we never would have thought doing about, maybe like in the next 5 years or in the next 10 years, but we are being forced to do them now because of the pandemic. So the pandemic has fast forwarded everyone into digital disruption, whether you are an organization or you are an individual who for the first time bought online during the lockdown. You see what I mean? Exactly. Some people would never have put their card details on the internet. It never would have happened. But because of lockdown, you have no other choice than to be part of this disruption. And so that is why we are going to really have an amazing time. And before we really get deep into what I want to talk about today, I want to tell you guys a quick story about myself. All right, like I asked, which side of disruption are you sitting on? I'm asking this because whether by choice or by circumstances, your life will be disrupted. And I am an example of that. Back in 2016, I was retrenched from a job I literally held to for dear life. I did not see the disruption happening. I did not see it coming. I didn't imagine that I would lose my job. So I went into work one morning and my boss called me in for a meeting. And in my mind, I thought it was just a meeting to catch up with things and bring him up to speed with what has been happening. And when I walked into his office that morning, immediately I realized that something was wrong the way he was looking at me. You know that look when someone gives you and you're like, okay, what did I do? So, but I knew I didn't do anything, but yet I couldn't. I knew something was wrong. And I stood there and he asked me to sit down. And I sat down. And for like 10 or 15 seconds, he didn't say anything, and it felt like eternity. I could feel my heart pounding out of my chest. I'm like, something's wrong. Can you just please spit it out? So eventually he opened his mouth and he told me there have been some restructuring going on, and they have decided to let me go. For some time, they have been wondering how to tell me or how to bring this to my knowledge, but apparently they have decided to let me go. And I sat there. Those words hit me like a train on high speed. I did not see this coming at all. My boss used to tell me of plans ahead of time, like 5 years ahead of the things we were going to do. And now I was like, this is not happening. And then he went further to start explaining why the restructuring was happening and why I was no longer needed. None of those was registering. I was just sitting there and thinking to myself, oh my God, what has just happened to me? To say that day and the weeks that followed and the months that followed were some of the darkest, lowest, most difficult time of my life. In fact, that would be an understatement. How I drove home that day, I have no idea. I was just like, oh my God, this is not happening. This is not happening. I was like a walking zombie. And it took literally 2 weeks for me to even tell my best friend that I just lost my job. I was trying to process the whole thing on my own. And I was like, why is this happening to me? I think I'm too young to be retrenched. I was that naive. I felt retrenchment was something that happens to old people, people that have worked in the industry like 20 years or 30 years within a particular organization. Then it's like, you're good for retrenchment, right? That's what I thought. I'm like, come on, I've been here. I'm just getting it. That was literally my first real job in the corporate world, right? So I was that entitled and that naive. But I don't deserve this. Some old person should be retrenched, not me, So I'm still trying to climb the corporate ladder and someone just snatched the ladder from underneath me. Then you can imagine, right? So, but nonetheless, as time went on, this frustration, this anger, this pain. Like, there were days I would literally cry myself to sleep. There were days, I would not even know when it was morning, when it's afternoon, or when it's night. Like, anxiety was the order of the day. I was that stressed. And the thing that made my retrenchment more painful was that it was exactly 1 year after my divorce that I lost my job. So it was like pain on top of another pain. I felt like if there was any woman who would lose their job, it's me. Now, as a single mom with 2 kids, where to from here? That was what it affected me so much. But nonetheless, as time went on, my frustration, my anger, my pain, my despair, it all translated into some sort of curiosity. Because as time went on, every time I turned like on the news, on TV, I would hear news about retrenchment. Have you ever had an experience where you buy a car and suddenly you start seeing that car everywhere? That was what happened to me. Even my smartwatch, before I had a watch, I never noticed people wearing smartwatches. But right now I'm like, oh, okay. So that was the experience I had. Now that I've been retrenched, news about retrenchment made more sense to me. Every time I turn on radio, every time I turn on the TV, like literally even passing next to the newspaper stand, I will see like a title, this company is retrenching so many and so many people. So all of this pain translated now into curiosity, and I was like, but what is driving retrenchment at the rate in which it's driving retrenchment? I was retrenched towards the end of 2016. So back then there was like a lot of retrenchment going on. I know that now it's like a bloodbath because of COVID and a whole lot of things that have happened, but even back then in 2016, there were a lot of companies letting people go. So all of this translated into curiosity. I wanted to understand what is driving retrenchment, number one. Number two, how can an organization let go, say, for example, 2,000 employees in the space of 2 to 3 years or 2 to 5 years, and they're thriving? I thought like people were the lifeblood of any organization, right? So I throw myself on the internet to satisfy my curiosity, so to say, but what keeps organization afloat when so many people leave? I mean, how is my boss surviving without me? I wanted to know, right? So I threw myself on the internet and I started researching, and for the first time, words like artificial intelligence started jumping on me. Like there are processes that are being automated, and people and organizations can continue to thrive and do even well, because most of these people that leave an organization, they are being replaced by machines. I was fascinated. It's like, wow. Now, I have no background in technology, okay? The only technology I knew prior to being retrenched was to sit on my laptop, work, send emails, or answer calls with my phone. I knew nothing beyond that. And now I'm on the internet finding all of these things, okay? The whole 4th industrial revolution, artificial intelligence, what is that? Most of these things sounded like Chinese language to me, believe me. But the more clueless I was, the more I wanted to know. So I dug myself even more and more into that rabbit hole. I started writing and putting on social media. And I noticed that a lot of people were very intrigued and fascinated by the things I was putting on social media. And then people that are even in the IT section started asking me questions as though I was the expert. It gave me some sort of comfort, like, wow, I'm not the only clueless person about this. Apparently, many people don't also understand how technology is changing the world. A lot of people don't have an understanding how emerging technologies are completely changing how work is done and how even we operate in our daily lives as even interacting with one another. So they started asking me questions, and I was like, good. I'm also as clueless as you. I have no idea what's going on here. But nonetheless, as time progressed, I realized that a lot of people are intrigued about this, and so I moved from posting it on social media to starting a blog. I started writing. Like I said, writing became a way of escape for me. And so as I started writing articles about it, at one point, I thought to myself, I think someone should write a book about this. But in a million years, I didn't think that someone would be me, okay? And the thoughts kept coming, and I'm like, not me. I cannot write a book. I'm not that smart. Believe you me, I'm not an academician by any stretch of imagination. I don't have a degree. I thought that for anyone to write a book, they have to be like really, really smart. I'm not the smartest person in the room, believe me. If I can do this thing, anybody can do it. I tell people, if like my friends get surprised that I wrote a book, I'm like, I'm more surprised than all of you that I wrote a book. I'm surprised that all of you that I wrote a book. So I was like, I cannot do this. I gave myself 1,000 reasons why I cannot write a book. I'm not smart, I don't have a degree, my English is so broken, you have to pick the pieces and put together before you understand what I'm saying. I gave myself all sort of reasons why I don't qualify to write that book. But as time progressed, it became like when an idea has taken hold of you, if you don't do that thing, it becomes like you're miserable, if you know what I mean. So I realized that it looks like it thought it's not going to leave me alone until I do this. I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm going to write a book. So it evolved from those social media posts to blog articles into a book. And I thought, what better title than Disrupt Yourself or Be Disrupted? Because I thought to myself, I was minding my business, right? And someone disrupted my life. I had no plan. I had no plan B. All I knew was that I had a job. I was looking at climbing the corporate ladder, and now this thing happens to me. So I thought the best way is to bring this conversation to a broader audience so that people can start asking themselves the hard questions. Because when we talk of disruption, a lot of people think of disruption only in terms of business. People don't think that personal disruption is the thing. When we hear of disruption, we're thinking of new business models that come to the marketplace, like maybe your Uber, your Airbnb, and disrupt the whole marketplace. That's all we're thinking about. But personal disruption can also happen where you as an individual, you want to pivot, you want to change. Then you start asking yourself the hard questions. Okay, can I be automated? Can the position I'm currently holding at work be automated? That's a scary question to ask, right? Can I be replaced by a machine? You're scared of even asking that because you don't want to come to face with the reality that it can happen to you. But these are questions I wanted people to start asking. Maybe you are in school. Ask yourself, what you're currently studying in school. By the time you graduate, will it still be relevant for the marketplace? These are the hard questions I wanted people to think, because personal disruption is really about forward thinking. A lot of times, people who are going back to school are thinking in the past, not in the future. And I can give an example for maybe those who are doing accounting or something like that. They're thinking of how accounting used to be the thing in the past. They're not thinking that now and in the future, there are softwares that can do accounting better than any human. So most people are going back to school, they're not asking themselves, this thing I'm going to do back in school, will it still be relevant 5 years from now? Will it still be relevant 10 years from now? They are thinking based on the past, on how this certificate helped their parents, or how this, being a doctor was a thing in the past. But now we have wearables and smart things that can totally detect things in our bodies without us needing to go to a doctor. Am I right? And then someone will be thinking, okay, I think I want to be a doctor, without really thinking about the future of how technology is going to affect that particular industry. So I wanted us to start having these conversations. How is technology going to affect the industry in which I am? I'm speaking to finance professionals, right? Ask the question, how is technology changing the finance industry? What technologies are changing the finance industry? How can I become part of that change? How can I become part of that disruption? How do I make sure I stay relevant? These are questions I wanted us to start having, and asking ourselves, because we are in the new era. And if you look at this image, you will see the different technologies that are driving change, that are driving disruption, digital disruption, and all of that. And I'm not here to speak on any of those technologies. If you want someone else to speak on those technologies, I'm not the person for that. You look for an expert for that. I'm not an expert on any of these technologies. But one thing I know is that if you do not understand the basics of these technologies and bring yourself up to speed with where the world is going, you will be left behind. And it is not about technology. Sometimes people focus on technologies, like I'm saying. When people hear of digital disruption, they're thinking of computers. They're not thinking of people. They're not thinking of you as an individual, me as an individual. People are not thinking in that line. A lot of people are just attributing digital disruption or disruption in general to businesses. But if businesses are disrupting and changing, and individuals or employees or people are staying stagnant, then there is a mismatch. Am I right? Exactly. So it is not really about disruption. It's not really about technologies, but it is about a new era. Understanding that Industry 4.0 is about a new era. New ways of thinking, new ways of doing business, new ways of earning a living, new ways of interacting with each other. It's really about a new era. When you understand that this is about a new era, and 4IR is not about technologies, then you can become part of what is happening. But for as long as we keep looking at it like this is about technology, this is about technology, you know where we are pushing the whole idea to? Technology experts, IT experts. That's where we are pushing the whole idea to. But when you understand that this whole 4IR thing is not about technology, then you can bring yourself into what is happening. But as long as we keep looking at it in terms of technology, we would think, this is for IT guys. No, it's affecting each and every one of us sitting here, whether you work in IT or not. And that is why I'm saying we're not here to talk about technology, because if it was about technology, an IT person would probably be standing here. And one thing is clear, the era in which technology was for specific people, like the IT guys, that era is over. Now everyone has to have an understanding of what technology is doing, irrespective of what industry you are, irrespective of what field you are. You need to have an understanding of how technology is working. When we are all called into different meetings or Zoom meetings, is it IT guys that come in and are having that meeting? No, we all have to understand the basics of how to use a Zoom meeting, get into a Zoom meeting. Can you hear me? Can you see me? We've all heard about that from 2020 up till now. Can you see my screen? It's not IT guys doing that, right? So those are like the basic things we need to understand about technology. And digital transformation or digital disruption is not about technology. I cannot stress this enough. Digital transformation starts with people. It starts with you, it starts with me. A successful digital enterprise is not a technological enterprise, but a configuration of people empowered by technology. And that is why Unilever brought me here. It's about empowering people. Yes, you can do that. Thank you, Ed, and thank you for your team for bringing me here, because this is really what it's all about. I'm not here to tell you my story to prepare you because your boss is trying to fire you tomorrow. That's not the whole purpose of this. Okay? Let me make that very clear, because some people are like, okay, this happened to her. Maybe the whole reason she's here is to prepare us. Maybe by next week, I'll be out of this door. No. Can you come back to the room? Stop worrying about what your children will go through, how you're going to pay school fees, how you're going to pay rent. We are here to empower you, or so that you can be inspired and empowered by technology. That's the whole purpose of this conference, okay? My story is to let you know if I can do it, are you sure you are human? Or are you just another robot plugged into the system? And then the next day you go home, or later in the day you go home, you come the next morning, you plug in. Are you human? Because being human, what makes you uniquely human is not your academic excellence. It is not your mental superiority or your technical skills. That's not what makes you human in the age in which you are living. Now, like I mentioned earlier, because we are interacting so much with technology, when you do have an interaction with a human being, it should be meaningful, and that's what makes you human. It is not about you carrying your certificate right here. Do you not have an MBA? And that's what all your talk is about. Do you not have a PhD? No one can get past you. You're just another robot plugged into the system, and that's your way of thinking. So, for you to be human, requires that you develop and sharpen your soft skills. Without soft skills, people are essentially robots. And we don't need any more robots flooding our world than we already do. You need to have a human element within you. And when you look at that image, you will see some of the most valued soft skills. Somebody said, common sense common sense is so scarce that it's supposed to be classified as a superpower. Who agrees with that? Because exactly, at least I have someone in the house who say, yeah, Nicky. Because basic things that you think someone will understand, they're like, I have a degree in accounting. No common sense whatsoever. All you need is to solve whatever you are solving. Sometimes most of it just needs common sense. It doesn't need a degree. Most of it just needs common sense to get certain processes sorted. And that's a soft skill. A lot of people are overlooking it and not paying attention to it. Being friendliness, what I mentioned earlier. Your friends, your colleagues looking forward to coming to work on Monday because you're a friendly person, a pleasant person to be around. So I don't want to go, we don't have the time to go into all of, talking about all the details of the soft skills, but just understand that being a good, well-rounded human being is good for business. It's important for us to understand that. Because the future belongs to those who can combine technical skills, soft skills, and that is the ultimate alpha skill. If you don't have soft skills, there is a struggle. Because people usually get hired for their talent. But 90% of people get fired. Because they are an impossible human being to deal with. You can be talented, gifted, perfect in your job. But if you're a difficult person to deal with, sometimes organizations are forced to let such people go. And I'm sure that we have experienced it one way or another as we have been, in the profession. Seen people come and go, not because they lack the skills, not because they are not qualified, but because they are just bringing the whole team down and making everyone miserable. Why? Because they lack soft skills. And that's why there's a saying, higher character, train skills. How many people have heard that? Higher character, train skills. Because you can't train somebody's character. You have to do it yourself. You have to do it yourself. Oh, I think there's something I needed to highlight there. Empathy, right? Empathy is important. It's one of the skills that is needed in this age and time. Like I mentioned earlier, if someone is going through a hard time, you will understand why they are behaving the way they are behaving, which means you are seeing with the eyes of another, listening with the ears of another, and feeling with the heart of another person. That's what empathy is all about. And it's important that we have developed these skills within us. Everyone sitting here is qualified, otherwise you wouldn't have the job, right? So we're not even talking about that. That isn't anything we should be talking about. Hard skills are learned through schooling. Is there anyone whose accounting certificate dropped from heaven? You woke up one morning and we learned through school, right? Yeah. No one woke up one morning and like, look what I found! I've been certified as an accountant! No, we went through. I respect people who do accounting. I don't know how you deal with numbers. I respect that. My family wanted me to go through that. They thought I was very good at it. But, okay, I don't want to go into that story. Let me not go into that story. But all the same, none of us woke up one morning and discovered we are an accountant. We went to school to study that. But here's the thing about soft skills. They don't come from any academic institution. They come through life experiences, right? A lot of us are going through stuff and we are not allowing it to change us. We're going through life experiences and we are wasting our pain, we are wasting our struggles. We are becoming victims, but you have to become a survivor, and that's how you develop soft skills. You know, soft skills are traits that make you a good employee, a good person, a good colleague to interact with. You have to influence hearts and minds to be able to win in this era. Whether you are a boss, as an individual, when you touch people's heart, they say what comes from the heart goes into the heart, right? When you touch people's hearts, that's when you win in this time or in this era. And it is quite important. So, like I said, we don't have to go into details about soft skills. I mean, hard skills. I'm more concerned about soft skills, okay? The next thing on the list of how you can stay relevant is that you should be able to adapt to change. Be like a chameleon. Not that type that backstab people, okay? There are different types of chameleons. You know those people you cannot trust? No, I don't. That's not what I'm talking about. So let's get that out of the way. I'm talking about a chameleon that is having the ability to adapt to the environment. Is that environment pink? It adapts. Is it blue? It adapts. Is it green? It adapts to that environment. That's what I'm talking about. Because according to Charles Darwin, it is not the strongest species that survive, not the most intelligent. I know there are a lot of intelligent people here. Like, you cannot be, I don't want to say dumb, and have an accounting degree. So I respect that. It requires a lot of intelligence for you to work in finance, for you to go through school, crunching those numbers, and actually graduate with a certificate in accounting. In fact, put your hands together for yourself. Just clap for yourself. That is a whole accomplishment, okay? But that's not what makes you relevant. What makes you relevant is your ability to adapt to change in the times in which you are living. So be like a chameleon. And with everything that I've been saying, if you sit back, and I find this quite interesting because a lot of people are worried being replaced by a robot, right? A lot of people are worried being replaced by a machine. But if you sit back, or you bury your head in the sand, or you do nothing, you will be replaced by someone who is leveraging technology and growing and improving themselves. You don't have to worry about a robot. The person who is improving themselves is the one who will get that promotion. Be like, but I have been here for 10 years. Just came in yesterday. Because this person is leveraging technology and improving themselves. The age where loyalty was a skill is over. The age where being friends with the boss and getting ahead it's over. Maybe it's not completely over, I don't know. That era is coming to an end, okay? Yeah. You have to be able to leverage technology to move ahead in life. Don't worry about a robot replacing you. Worry about your colleague who is lighting the digital candle in the night, searching through Google, looking for free courses, looking for things that can empower themselves and upskill themselves. That's the person you should be worried about. That's your competition, not a robot. Because so many people, like I said, they're like wheelbarrows, right? This finance conference is happening next year again? Maybe, okay. Some people will only think about digital disruption next year during the next finance conference, but I hope it doesn't happen to anyone here. That's what I'm talking about, okay? So it is time for you to take your own personal growth seriously. It is time for you to take your own personal growth seriously. Otherwise, you will not be replaced by a robot. You will be replaced by someone who is leveraging on technology and moving ahead in life. Become part of the revolution. Because one thing I realized is that, okay, let me tell you a quick story. I was in Kenya, in Nairobi, Kenya for a conference, and when I finished my presentation, someone put up the hand and like, Nicky, Africa should not be talking about the fourth industrial revolution. We are still in the third industrial revolution. And that's a valid point to an extent. Let's be fair, okay? But I was like, yeah, you're right. And then I asked the guy, what phone are you using? He said he was using, I think it was iPhone 11 at the time. He was using iPhone 11. I was like, wow. You said 4R is not supposed to be in Africa. You are more 4R than me. I don't even have an iPhone. He has iPhone 11. I'm like, okay, when was the last time you went to the bank to do any transactions? Like, it's been a long time. He does most of his transactions online. And yet, you are telling me that Africa is not ready for the fourth industrial revolution. It's like, okay, this is what is happening. When this revolution is happening, it's not asking you if you're ready. It's not asking anyone in this room, are you ready? Can I come now? It's not coming to say, hey, Africa, are you ready? No. And when we look on the other side of the coin, we are the ones driving this change. We are the ones driving the fourth industrial revolution. Nobody wants to go and stand in the queue in the bank. Who wants to go and do that? Nobody. Nobody. We want to press a button and a taxi is outside to pick us. Like for me this morning, on my Uber, they got me to the airport. We want to press a button and pizza is delivered at the door. We want to sit on our laptops and finish with our financial transactions whatsoever. We don't want to go and have an interaction with the teller at the bank. Maybe he or she is having a bad day and you end up quarreling with that person. Nobody wants to do that. So as human beings, we are the ones actually driving this disruption. And then we don't like the consequences of it, and then that's when we start complaining. But here's what I want to leave you guys with. You cannot stop the fourth industrial revolution. You cannot stop technological advancement. Nobody has that power. But here's what you can do. You can influence its direction and impact in your life. And how do you influence that? I've already said it 1,000 times. Leveraging on technology and improving yourself. That is the part you can control. Anything else, you cannot control. So don't focus on the threats. Yes, it's causing a lot of people to lose their jobs. True. But don't focus on that threat. Focus on the opportunity. Focus on what you can gain out of it. And as I conclude, I will leave you with this question. What's it gonna be? I hope nobody is speaking with me. And so, thank you for having me. That's the end of my talk. And if there are any questions, I'll be looking forward to answering your questions. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Even online, guys.
Yes, people online should send through their questions.
Okay.
And we have some giveaway for those who ask the best question. Can we do that? Yes, we have some giveaway with my book for those who will ask. I don't know how to categorize it. Yeah, let's say a question.
Maybe I need a
Yeah, it would be like randomly, but okay.
I'm kidding. Really, really awesome. I think this is something that a lot of us needed.
Thank you.
And yeah, so I think personally grateful. I know it's hard for you to hear, but like I'm grateful that you got retrenched so that you can like really, it was you were sent, which is really cool. I guess there's so much out there, right? After reading the book, where do we start? Like, no, I'm kidding, but like, where does one start? Because there's so much out there, and you can immerse yourself in many different things, and you actually never complete much.
Yeah.
So like, what's your advice for us to just start, somewhere, somehow?
I'm glad you answered the question partially. Start with the book, right? So that's the beginning. We all start with the book, okay? But what I can say is that, yes, there's a lot of information, like we're constantly being bombarded with information. Even me, sometimes I get overwhelmed, okay? But here's the thing, rather get in bits than not get at all. So when you find the time, go online, find what is relevant for your industry, search on what is relevant for your industry. YouTube is a school on its own, Google is a school on its own. There are so many open-ended education platforms online that have different courses you can take. Udemy is an example. You can go on Udemy, maybe you're interested in data analytics or data science or whatever. You can find courses online that you can take. Some of them can be 3 months, some of them can be 6 months, and you pay for it. Because some people will be like, Unilever has to pay for it. So that they have an excuse that, you know why I didn't do it is because my employer didn't pay for it. No, some of you should be willing to pay for your own growth. Yeah. So I had no employer, okay? But somehow I've paid my way through. So yeah, I think, did I answer your question? Yeah, that is my suggestion really. It's better to take in bits by bits what you can take, find what is relevant for your industry because there is so much out there. So try to like narrow it down to your industry and what is relevant for your career.
Yeah. I think I have one.
Can I see? Okay, from there, all right.
Okay, cool. I think, yeah, you made some very, very, very great points. So I've been here for like 5 months now, right? And coming from outside, obviously you tend to see things because I've never been in Unilever or in this type of industry. Some stuff is shocking, some stuff is good stuff, excellent stuff that we're doing very well as an organization. So it's all well and good that we're talking digital disruption technology. And I think when someone for me was responsible for data science and analytics in the organization, we're still far behind, but I feel that we as an organization are at a point where we do understand reporting. We know about analytics, all this stuff. So my question to it is to how do we now take everyone along the journey? And I think it needs to, I get the employees get it. I think from a leadership perspective, how do we drive that mindset and cultural change to say, guys, it's not necessarily just about speaking about it in presentations and all these things. How do we now actually implement it on the ground with the people? Because if you go to any person with VP or EVP, they'll talk about digital, we need to be digital, we need to be agile. But practicality, I don't see it. So how do we change that from the top that they see that this works? I think for me, that's the question.
Okay, great. Let me attempt and see if I can answer that question, because this one is coming from the leadership perspective. I have to be careful what I'm saying. Okay, from the leadership perspective, I think that having a conference like this is the beginning.
Organization is not yet ready or not wanting to go along, but finance is putting its hand up and we're committed to it.
Okay.
So that's one step of actually doing it, and you will see once the other function sees the benefit of it, they will come along. Absolutely. They will join the journey.
Absolutely. So that's one way of doing it. Did that answer your question? Yeah, so organizing events like this is one way to get people's minds open, get people inspired and motivated to do something on their own, and where an organization has the budget to put in through people to educate. I mean, there's a quote that came online, I don't remember who it is from, but he said, a lot of organizations are holding back about empowering people, or maybe paying for people to go back to school because they are worried. What if we empower them and they leave? But there's one important question that organizations tend to forget. What if you don't empower them and they stay?
Okay, we've got a question in Johannesburg.
Oh, great.
Serrano, you can go and ask your question.
Okay, thanks, Bob. I'm hoping you can hear me on that side. So I think just a question to Nicky is for those of us who might not necessarily know of individuals or platforms to follow, right? Where would you best guide us to see who can we follow, what are the platforms we can start looking at, as well as more personally, who was the person that you learned from the most?
interesting question. Have I ever thought about that? Okay, my journey, it's one that it's not a normal journey for so many reasons. I stumbled into this, there are people where they say you find your purpose, and for some your purpose find you. So this thing fell on my lap, okay? And I had no idea what to do with it. So for me, it wasn't like a particular person. I think it was more of the circumstances in which I found myself, and then I was forced to make something out of that. It was just like maybe the saying, when life throws lemons at you, make lemonade out of it. I think that for me was more of the what happened with me in terms of who inspired me in relation to technology or digital decision. I wouldn't think that there's any particular person. For me, it was something that when I threw myself online and I started researching and reading more on the on digital disruption or technology in general, I was just fascinated by the whole thing. So for me, that is really how it happened for me. And maybe for anyone sitting here, once you throw yourself, in that rabbit hole, maybe you might just be specifically about finance. You might realize just how fascinating it is, and you'll be like, wow, I can't believe I haven't been looking into this. So sometimes it might not be a person that will push you towards something. It might just be the circumstance in which you find yourself. And for me, it was more of my circumstances than an individual, impacting me and changing my mindset about this whole thing. So I hope I answered your question. Any more questions?
Elvis?
Is it me? Am I live? Am I live?
But they can't see you.
No, they can hear me. I'm the only one with a unique voice. Question. Based on your travel and experience, how conscious is the African continent around digital disruption? Are we far back?
That's an interesting question. There are areas in which we are far back, and there are areas in which we are making progress. And I think for areas that we are really behind, I would point it to the education system, right? My son came back home with a textbook that's written technology, you guys are doing technology. Okay, this boy, they don't have any computer lab in their school, but there's a textbook on technology. So I decided to go through what this textbook is about, and all I could see were some really old buildings, bridges. I saw no images of a laptop or a computer or a lab or any of that thing in nature, right? So, and then he himself was laughing and telling me, Mommy, I think this is from the second industrial revolution. So what the school, well, maybe not for every school, all right? So I can only speak for this school. So what their school is doing, it's really, you find that what they're teaching the kids in relation to technology is not what is happening in the real world. So that is one way in which Africa as a continent is behind, in my opinion. We are not exposing our kids to the skills of the future or to relevant things that will help them in future. I had to sign up my kids for coding classes, which is like an extra class out of school. And most of the time when they are telling their friends in school that they are going for coding classes, most of the friends are, what is coding? What is coding? I mean, that is how far behind we are in that area. Okay, but then in other areas, I think we are making progress in terms of we see the way Africa is rising in relation to different startups, that are rising out of the continent. You can think of Africa introduced mobile money to the rest of the world. If you think of M-Pesa from Nairobi, most people in the world knew mobile as a talking thing. You just talk to people with your phone. But Africa changed that. The innovation that came from mobile, when mobile landed in Africa, people realized that there was much more to mobile than just talking on the phone. And the same is happening with drones. When I went to Rwanda, I actually went to the drone airport in Rwanda, and I was blown away with what they're doing with drones. In other parts of the world, drones is for taking pictures and recording movies and things like that. But when that innovation came to Africa, in Rwanda, they are using it to deliver blood and medical things to different hospitals, which would take, the roads are very bad in some parts of Africa, so they're using drones to get, help to patients faster. And those are things I noticed, in Rwanda. Some of them are happening in Kenya, like I've mentioned. So those are some of the areas in which Africa is making progress. So In some parts, it's like really slow. In terms of infrastructure, we know how we're still struggling with internet in certain parts. So there's progress on one hand, and there is, you know what I mean, on the other hand. So that's what is really happening. But nonetheless, we are excited for the progress that is happening, and things are actually changing because a lot of people are really starting to question, you know, the status quo. They want people to be more plugged on the internet. I see certain government initiatives, and I ask myself, oh my God, why don't just give these people the internet? You know, rather than giving people money at the end of the month. I think that happened during COVID, right, where they were trying to help some people survive by giving a certain grant to people. And in my mind, I'm like, I think if these people can be provided with free access to the internet, some of them will make much more on the internet than that 350 rands that the government is giving them. So I think that in terms of infrastructure, maybe we are still going to like slowly get to that place. But yeah, it is what it is. I try not to be like too negative about what's happening in Africa. I try to look at the positive, and then we look at the negatives and see where we can make progress. But I pray and hope and wish that the government can really understand the power of the internet, and more people, especially in townships, can have access to the internet. Of course, there are those that will abuse it. There are those that will, just make it not have, anything to do with it, but there are those that will take it and make good use of it. When I lost my job, I had no money, so I couldn't afford data. I worked, and my research was all from the library that was close to where I lived. But most of the time when I was at the library, I would see other people come in with a laptop, other kids coming with a laptop, maybe students, some my age as well. But you know what they're watching, using that free internet to do? Watching music and comedy on YouTube. So those are the ones that have no idea what to do with these resources, that some of us were really fighting to get access to make something of it. But a lot of people will sit there and just watch music videos. Go on YouTube, check music, the views on music compared to the views on finance. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Go on YouTube, check the views on makeup. I'm part of those views. I look really I increase those views, but when I finish learning how to make up, I also go on the other side, okay? So I used to tell ladies, like, don't tell me you don't know what to do. Who taught you how to make makeup? Most of us are learning online, right? And you'll be sitting and blaming the government. The government didn't do it. There was no government official that came to your doorstep and said, go online and learn how to draw your eyelashes or your brows, or that. So yeah.
We are running out of time, so we are going to take a question in Zoom now. We're going to do 2 more questions here, guys, and I promise you, Nicky, you'll be here for lunch. You can buy a book, get her to autograph it, and ask her your questions. I also have quite a few questions. So we're crossing over to Zoom. You can come off mute.
We have one more question in Joburg as well.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Nicky, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Jean. I'm from the Zoom Finance team. So just want to say thank you very much for your inspirational story. Everyone in the Zoom office was nodding, and all sorts of ums and ahs happening here. So we thank you for that. My question is, what was your turning point in your digital disruptive journey, even after being retrenched? What was your turning point?
I think I told that part of the story at some point. My turning point for me was really when I asked myself, what next? Now that this has happened to me, what next? And when I threw myself on the internet and became really fascinated with what was happening, I just took it from there. I didn't think, like I was saying in the beginning, I did not imagine that it would put me on the path in which I am now, but I wanted to satisfy my curiosity of some sort. I wanted to understand, maybe just for the sake of knowledge, just understand what is happening, at the background, and why things are changing, the world of work is changing the way it is changing. So for me, that really became my turning point, which one thing led to another, one thing led to another, one thing led to another, and here we are today. So that was really a turning point for me when I started asking those questions.
We're going to take the one from Joburg. Whoever has questions here, guys, please ask Nicky. You can go up to her and ask her. The Joburg people are not going to get a chance to ask us, so we're going to take their question, and then we are going to break for lunch.
Okay, hi, Nicky. So I recently joined the organization on the 1st of May, right? I come predominantly from the telecommunication sector, and I'll be driving some of the digital initiatives for finance. So I've got an industry-based question, industry-specific for FMCG. I want to know, is there any chance that you know which parts of the business would digital technologies impact the most? Would it be the consumer part, finance, governance? Do you have any knowledge of that sort? That's my first question. And then the second question is, as management, we can drive out digital technologies and training, but are there any indicators that we can measure a culture change from a workforce? So how to measure whether the workforce is responding successfully the way that we want to?
Okay, those are really great questions. Let me attempt the first one. Will probably be out of my league, but this is what I can say in terms of what drives digital disruption. Is it from the consumer perspective or organizational perspective? Personally, this is my idea, okay, so take it with a grain of salt. I think that consumers are really the ones driving this change to a larger extent, okay? Like I mentioned earlier, who wants to go to the bank and stand on queues? No one. There was a time where you could package anything and sell to consumers. But today, they go on Google, they check everything. If you are not authentic, you will be found out. So that is how, like, the consumers nowadays have become very intelligent, very tech savvy, and so most of the change is really being driven by consumers. That is my opinion. I'm not sure what the experts, if the expert will agree with me on that, but that is really how I think about it. Like, us consumers are driving most of the change. We want things now, we want things to be happening a certain way. We decide which brands, carries our values and the ones that don't, and then we engage with them and things like that. So consumers have a lot to do in this space of digital disruption. And the second question was how to measure the culture within an organization, right? Was that the second question? Yeah, oh, okay. Okay. When people start showing up to work on Monday morning and smiling, you know you're winning. You know you're winning, so I guess that's that for the segment. So any more questions?
Okay, HR is like really wanting to ask their questions, the last question. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicky, for sharing those soft skills and the importance of those soft skills in the business or within our organization or within us as individuals. If maybe you can share one advice that you individuals can use in order to find that balance between technical skills and soft skills, because some individuals can be good technically, but when it comes to the soft skills, we find that there's a gap. What are some of the advice that you can give to the individuals to make sure that they find that balance between the two?
Okay, great. I think I kind of feel like I spoke about it within the talk, but I can still emphasize by saying, understand that being human is much more than having technical skills. Being human is much more than being the best employee of the year, or employee of the month, or employee of the week, however it's being categorized. It takes much more than that to be human. Learn to be a person that does not cause friction with other people as much as you can. I know that conflict is something that we cannot entirely avoid. It happens as we interact with people, but learn to handle it in a healthy way. From time to time, we're going to mess up, we're going to say things we shouldn't say, we're going to do things that we shouldn't do. But as individuals, on your own, don't check what the next person is doing. On your own, decide that you're going to be a pleasant person to be around. You're going to handle your difficulties, in a more mature way. And for those that maybe they are not winning, like I mentioned earlier, therapy is not a weakness, okay? COVID-19 in general has done a number on all of us. I don't think there's anyone sitting here that has not been affected, mentally in some way by this whole COVID-19 thing and the lockdown and everything. So we are all a work in progress. So to find that balance, it takes awareness, self-awareness. the worst thing, the worst people to deal with are people who are not aware of how they come across. When you are not aware how you come across and how people perceive you, you are a real pain. So self-awareness is really the way to balance, your technical skills and your soft skills. When you're self-aware, then you start asking yourself, how do I improve in this area? How do I grow from this place? How do I do this and all of that? So I hope I answered your question. There was supposed to be some giveaway. And everyone is just brilliant, so I don't even know who to give the books to.
I'll sort that out.
Great, thanks for saving me. That was going to be a hard one.